Chapter 1: Catastrophe Strikes. Nanu, Jiangcheng. As a typical small city in Jiangnan, when classified nationally, it barely crossed the threshold into a fourth-tier city. Compared to those first- and second-tier cities, this place was truly a remote corner. However, even so, it remained a place where nearly 1 million people sought their livelihoods. Of course, at the moment, Gordon was not among those millions. The reason was simple. Due to the epidemic, the company had once again downsized, and this time, Gordon, who had managed to dodge previous rounds of layoffs, wasn't so lucky this time. Inside a rented house in the suburbs, Gordon put down the mouse in his hand, stood up from the computer chair, and walked straight to the refrigerator. It was nearly 3 in the afternoon, and he felt a bit hungry. Although he had resigned 4 days ago, Gordon wasn't anxious. On the contrary, he rather enjoyed these leisurely days without having to be busy all day. As an orphan without any family to support, Gordon didn't feel any mental pressure. Just now, his refrigerator was already filled with all sorts of food: fruits, instant noodles, chocolates, bread, beer, soda, and more. There was a variety of items. On the floor to the left of the refrigerator, there were even 2 5-liter bottles of spring water. Roughly estimated, even if he stayed indoors for the next 10 days, he'd live quite comfortably. Just as he took out a bottle of Coke from the refrigerator and was about to drink, Gordon furrowed his brows slightly and, with a turn of his gaze, looked out of the rental house window. He felt that something was amiss. It seemed too quiet outside. It didn't make sense, because although his residence was in the suburbs of Jiangcheng, there were plenty of tenants nearby. It shouldn't have been so quiet. With a hint of doubt, Gordon couldn't even enjoy his bottle of Coke anymore. Instead, he strode towards the window. How could this be? As his gaze crossed the several residential buildings, not far away, Gordon's eyes instinctively looked up towards the sky. He couldn't help but let out a soft exclamation, and his pupils involuntarily contracted, as if he had seen something unbelievable. The sky was no longer the usual blue with white clouds. Instead, there was a massive, almost city-encompassing, terrifying red cloud covering Jiangcheng. This red cloud was abnormal, presenting a blood-red hue. Under the radiant red light, Jiangcheng seemed to be enveloped in a layer of bloody clothing, eerie and horrifying. Noticing this scene, not only Gordon but countless others were staring blankly at the sky, just as Gordon was. Even the vehicles driving on the streets had all come to a halt at some point, causing Gordon's initial confusion. In the silence, the red cloud in the sky began to change again. Within the depths of the cloud, the blood-red mist began to surge and gradually intensify, as if something was brewing. Seeing the scene, Gordon's eyebrows twitched, and he felt that something was wrong. However, before he could react, boom! Accompanied by a thunderous roar, like that of a shocking thunderbolt, the ground under his feet trembled violently. The words, "earthquake," had just appeared in his mind when the intense shaking suddenly dissipated, as if everything that had just happened was merely an illusion. Turning his gaze back to the window, Gordon's expression changed abruptly. Darn it, get out of here. Help, no. Countless cries of misery and screams came from outside the window, accompanied by the sound of car collisions and inexplicable roars and sharp roars. With a changing expression, Gordon's breathing became slightly rapid. Although he had some capacity to accept things beyond the ordinary, when faced with the facts right before his eyes, the sense of helplessness in his heart still began to magnify. After taking a deep breath, Gordon forced himself to calm down, pressing his body firmly against the window and trying to look down as much as possible. Although the outside world had been shrouded in fog, his floor wasn't too high, and with time, the fog seemed to gradually dissipate, allowing him to faintly see the outline of the street below. As his gaze moved, Gordon strained to see the situation below. However, the next second, his eyes widened in disbelief as he saw a figure that made him unable to believe his eyes. Chapter 2: Card Registry. The white, skeletal structure, the flames flickering in the skull, and the bone spear already stained red with blood. All of this seemed to tell Gordon that this was unmistakably a creature that had appeared in countless novels and games. An undead creature, a skeleton. Of course, that wasn't the main point. What made Gordon's face suddenly pale was the object held in the hands of this suspected skeletal being. It was a skull, one that was still dripping blood, with wide-open eyes and a human expression frozen on its face. Obviously, this suspected undead creature had killed at least one person, indicating a great deal of malice toward humans. Damn it! With a muttered curse, Gordon clenched his left hand tightly around the mechanical compound bow, but chose not to attack. He didn't have many arrows, and he couldn't afford to waste them when he wasn't sure if he could kill his target. What he needed to do now was to observe further, understand the specific strength of this skeleton creature and the surrounding situation before deciding whether to take action. Recklessly attacking was not his style. 10 minutes later, Gordon quickly felt relieved for his earlier decision. In a short period, the number of skeleton creatures that appeared in his field of vision had already exceeded a dozen. It was conceivable that there were probably even more in places he couldn't see. While relieved, Gordon also felt a heavy weight on his heart. If the number of these skeleton monsters exceeded his imagination, his situation would become extremely dire. However, during this time, Gordon made an unexpected discovery. The monsters appearing in the city were not only skeleton creatures. He saw the shadow of another type of creature in a corner, although it was a bit far away and not very clear. But it was certain that its physique was completely different from the skeleton monsters. Definitely another completely different creature. More than an hour later, Gordon put down the curtains and returned to the sofa in the living room. After a long period of observation, he had roughly figured out the strength of those skeleton monsters outside. They were far stronger than ordinary adult human males and could easily overpower them one-on-one, but they were not yet at a level of despair. Roughly estimating, in a 5-on-1 situation, both sides could hold their own. In other words, each of these skeleton monsters could take on 5 opponents. Upon reaching this conclusion, Gordon not only felt no fear, but also breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. At least these creatures were not yet so powerful as to be suffocating. With a team of 5, proper timing, good positioning, and his mechanical bow, there was still some chance of success. Having reached this conclusion, Gordon did not wait any longer. It was approaching evening, and who knew what would happen at night. He had to do something now, or he might not even be able to resist when the crisis came. Deciding to act, he hastily ate a piece of bread to fill his stomach, then gripped his mechanical bow and stepped to the front door. After making sure there were no monsters in the hallway outside, he directly unlocked the door. After locking the door and putting away the key, Gordon began his action. Instead of going downstairs, he slowly headed upstairs. The residential building he was in had 7 floors, and he was only on the 3rd floor. Before going out, he naturally had to make sure of the situation in the entire building. Just as he reached the 4th floor, Gordon noticed something. Boom, boom, boom. The heavy pounding sounds kept echoing. In the current situation, this was definitely not normal. After determining the source of the pounding, Gordon took out the tools he had brought with him and, after multiple attempts, with a click sound, he managed to pry open the door of the room. However, just as the door was pried open, the eerie, dense pounding inside the room suddenly stopped. Hearing this, Gordon's whole body suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. Without hesitation, he quickly retreated in the opposite direction. Almost the next second, with a loud bang sound, the pried open door was violently pushed open by a great force, and a gray-green figure roared out of the room. This gray-green figure held a small wolf-tooth club in its hand. After rushing out of the door, it didn't stop, but charged straight towards Gordon, who had retreated several meters away, raising the club high. Gordon suddenly felt a strong smell hitting his face. Without changing his expression, Gordon continued to retreat while quickly taking out the second arrow from behind. After a few seconds, the arrow shot out again, and this time it hit the monster's right eye directly. The monster trembled slightly with a painful roar, and then, unbelievably, it continued to rush towards Gordon, seemingly unaffected by the fatal blow. Damn it! With a low curse, unable to think much, Gordon could only repeat the previous action. Luckily, this fourth-floor corridor was long enough, and he ran towards the staircase, while the monster kept chasing him until they reached the third floor. At the bottom of the stairs, the mechanical bow was drawn again. Die! With a deep shout, although Gordon's momentum was strong, he felt a wave of weakness in his heart. The monster now had 7 arrows stuck in its body, and he only had 3 left. If he couldn't kill it this time, he would have to choose to run away in embarrassment. In that case, retrieving the shot arrows would also be difficult, which would greatly affect his future plans. The arrow shot out, and this time it luckily pierced the monster's right eye. With this hit, the monster lost its sight completely, and with a loud thud, it fell heavily to the ground. Seeing this, Gordon quickly shot 2 more arrows. After tens of seconds, the monster finally stopped struggling. Phew! A heavy panting sound came out of Gordon's nostrils, and a smile appeared on his lips at the same time. After all, his efforts were not in vain. In his joy, a white light suddenly flew out from the monster's body in front of him. Before Gordon could react, it swiftly entered his forehead. Suddenly, Gordon felt his strength soaring, as if he had endless energy. If his physique had been just a normal standard for an ordinary person before, then after this enhancement, Gordon felt he could easily take on 2 opponents at once. At the same time, his body was strengthened. A mechanical prompt sounded in his ears. Obtained 2 points of source energy. Card registry awakened. Obtained new player reward. Card points 10. Choose 1 of 3 random miracle cards. Additionally, with the sound of this mechanical prompt, Gordon found that something seemed to have appeared in his mind. It was a square card, emitting a sparkling white light. This is it for today. Like and subscribe. See you next video.